This is the world of Salesforce and Dropbox, HubSpot and Evernote, a world unthinkable without cloud software services. Most businesses and consumers use SaaS every day to get work done. Driven by the internet and ever-expanding availability of bandwidth, SaaS has come to dominate our lives in a very short span of time. But developing a defining service, often ahead of its time, getting users to engage, secure funding, protect IP, and building a truly remarkable and successful SaaS is not an easy task. SAAStories brings conversations with the dreamers and visionaries who dared to think ahead. How they built their SaaS, genesis, struggles, trials, tribulations, and eventually success. Welcome to SAAStories. Thank you for your time and for joining us in this session. I have a favor to ask. While you continue to listen to the podcast, please leave a comment or rating at iTunes or wherever else you get your podcasts from. I personally look at each comment and will give you a shout out to each of you in our following episodes. It means a lot to hear from you. Welcome to this new exciting episode of SAAStories. Today we speak with Raj Sheth, founder and CEO of Decalab and Flydata. We will discuss his first few startups till Recuiterbox, his biggest learnings, discuss ideas that made growing 300% year-on-year possible, leading finally to getting acquired in a multi-million-dollar deal.
The initial problem statement was that why can't I find a job that I like, not by job title filters, but other attributes and characteristics of a company, right? So the starting point was I can't do that on Indeed. So how can I become a place where, meaningful job fits are found, which funnily later morphed into, hey, what is the first place a company creates a job on the internet? And that's the applicant tracking software. Funnily, we didn't know what applicant tracking software was, but at the time there was a customer in Bangalore called, Levi's, who said that, hey, can you make this for us? So in some sense, it was a very iterative product.
Raj Sheth is a serial entrepreneur selling his first food delivery business when he was 20. His next two startups failed, but the failures led him to Recuiterbox, which he grew to a 3,000 plus customer base and 4 million in ARR before exiting and acquiring Flydata. His first-hand experience in global entrepreneurship and team building, B2C and B2B market fit, exits and acquisitions have been useful for a lot of entrepreneurs starting out. He has been featured in New York Times and Washington Post. Now on to this informative and tactical episode with Raj Sheth. Raj, welcome to SAAStories. I'm really very, very happy to get you here and good we connected. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here. Thanks.
So before we dive in, tell a little bit about yourself so that people who are listening to this get a general orientation of what you've accomplished till now, because that's really key to the rest of the story that we're going to unfold.
Absolutely. So basically, currently I'm on company 4 or company 5, whichever way you count it. But about 15, 16 years ago, when I was 3 years out of college, I started my first company, which was a B2C company, a B2C portal, which eventually failed. It was sort of a classified site or a Craigslist for India. Now, I guess a current example would be OLX, and this was in 2006. I had a second startup that was also B2C, which was a marketplace for jewelry. And these two were full-time efforts for, I think spanning over 5 years. So I would say 2 years and 3 years, etc. And both of those failed. And then my third attempt was a SaaS product, B2B, called Recuiterbox. And that's the one that stuck. We kind of grew that company over 6.5, 7 years to 4 million ARR, bootstrapped it the whole way, didn't raise any money, and it was finally acquired by private equity. I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about it. And now I'm essentially at it again, and this time we're taking an interesting model. We have actually acquired a product that was at product market fit, under $1 million in revenue, and we are trying to grow that business because we really enjoy the 1 to 10, and we basically were interested in the space, and it's called Flydata. But I'll keep it at that. Like outside of these four, I also had a business when I was in college for 2 years, which was a website that delivered food from restaurants that didn't deliver. This was, in the US, in Boston. And funnily, in a very small way, I shouldn't call it a company. It was more a student business. But I ended up selling it for $1,000 when I graduated to a fellow student.
Seriously?
So I've kind of been at this for a while, and I enjoy the adventure.
Wonderful. I mean, let's dig in. What were you thinking when you started the OLX kind of exchange? What sort of triggered that?
Like a lot of people, I was in love with the internet. I was fascinated with the internet, and to be very honest, the childish fantasy was that, wow, here's a place, here's a domain, here's a website where I can fill up my own stadium with 10,000 people, right? Like imagine if we can all have our stadiums and fill them up. Right. And, very truthfully, that was it. And maybe that's why it failed, because I was, as a user, I used to do a lot of things on Craigslist, and I thought that added so much value, and it was so simple. And this was 2006, by the way. And I was like, wow, I'm sure like this will work, amazingly well in India. The problem later was more like, even with transaction happening, there wasn't really a revenue model. People were not like paying to list things. But that is what prompted it, to answer your question. It was like, hey,
So as a timeline is 2006, you were out of college, you came back to India.
Yeah, 2003, I was out of college. And 2003 to 2006, I worked at EMC Square, which was my first and last job. I say last because after that, I didn't get a paycheck from someone else for a long time. So.
Right. So 2006, the Craigslist experience in the US sort of stuck in your head, and you thought this could be a disruptor for India. But India is a different animal. People don't like to pay for stuff, right? So how did that morph into the jewelry? Did you see a lot of traction in that piece? What was it called, by the way?
The first one, the portal was called 16to60.com. The idea being that you can get anything here, 16to60.com.
Right. So, so the question was that, did you see a lot of traction in the jewelry space, which sort of triggered the idea that, why don't I sort of silo it and go focus on this space? Was that the case, or was it something else?
It was actually something else. The problem statement was that I knew a lot of people that were either manufacturing, producing, creating, high-end diamond jewelry. And to be honest, they had heard of Blue Nile in the US. So they were toying with the fact that, hey, can we go direct to consumer? And this is 2008. Can we go direct to consumer, right? And since I had the supply side of that marketplace figured out, I figured that was worth the attempt. The challenge with this was that it was super difficult to seed for two reasons. One is that while a lot of transactions, even back then or now, were taking place online, people were not really making $5,000, $10,000 transactions, or they were not making 1 lakh plus rupee transactions online. Right. First of all, right? So that was one challenge. And the other challenge was that what I realized is that if you're doing any storefront, whatever it is, whether it's jewelry or not, marketplace or not, you need a lot of SKUs and a lot of variety. Like you can't just have, 5 products or 10 products or 16 products or 30 products. That won't do it for the consumer, right? And both of those things, while quickly apparent, were very hard for me to fix, right? And we were not, while we had some early adopters on the supply side who were like, hey, let's put our supply out there, there wasn't a critical mass of them. Because they were entrenched and committed to the channels they were in, whether they were a wholesaler or a retailer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so these are like sort of like early adopters, but they didn't have enough momentum to push it through themselves. In terms of the supply side, I'm saying, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And also, to be honest, this was always that cute little thing that they wanted to do on the side. They're like, dekhte hain, chalega to chalega. Like they have their main, business, and they're like, oh, can this be 1-2% of revenue? And it was a catch-22 because they're like, oh, if it works, we will see if it can be a larger piece of the pie, but they would not probably make, and it was a classic, catch-22 sort of a situation where like you need more from them to show those early results, but they want to see results before giving.
So at this stage, just a quick question is, were you having a development team already? So this is a bunch of people who are working with you from the previous one to this one. What was happening there?
So, this, it was, the first one was an outsourced development team, which was my biggest mistake and my biggest learning, by the way. And the second time, there were 2 people, in fact, 1.5 people working on the platform, which was not as grave as a mistake as the first one, but still a mistake, which is pretty much what led me to, teaming. What I realized, it doesn't even matter if it's B2B, B2C, whatever. My hard hit lesson was that the co-founding team has to be well-rounded, and it cannot be just me. That was like actually my number one lesson from all those escapades.
So now we are already in like 2010, 11?
2010.
2010. So this is when you decided, okay, this marketplace is not going to work. I need to move on. How did you now arrive at Recuiterbox? I mean, it's as far diamond to recruitment. I mean, it's diamonds in a way, but how did you reach there?
So, what happened is I had these 2 startups or attempts or failures, whatever you want to call them, they were not funded. They were not funded, or they were not funded affairs, right? So it was a little bit of a scrappy execution. So by this point, I was on fumes, right? I was running on fumes. A common friend of mine in Bangalore introduced me to Raghu and Girish, which had they had also left their jobs like a couple of years ago, and they both were IIT Chennai graduates. They both were engineers. One was focused on front end and product. The other one was on back end. And essentially, they had thought of 2 products. Actually, they had thought of Recuiterbox, and the problem statement was the initial problem statement was that why can't I find a job that I like, not by job title filters, but other attributes and characteristics of a company, right? So the starting point was I can't do that on Indeed. So how can I become a place where, meaningful job fits are found, which funnily later morphed into, hey, what is the first place a company creates a job on the internet? And that's the applicant tracking software. Funnily, we didn't know what applicant tracking software was, but at the time there was a customer in Bangalore called, Levi's, who said that, hey, can you make this for us? So in some sense, it was a very iterative product. Like there was only a candidate box, which was better than Gmail. So you can actually process things. But anyway, coming back to the story, I kind of met Raghu and Girish, where they had sort of the early Recuiterbox germination was there. The thought was there, the product was there, but they, while they were building it, they basically were looking for a third founder, and I was looking to team with, a team of engineering co-founders to build the next thing. And that's how it came about, to be honest. So we hit it off. We really got along, and then we decided to do Recuiterbox, and then there were many iterations. We decided it should be only SaaS, only focused on the US. We put it on, Google Apps Marketplace and Chrome Web Store, and then started marketing it. We then even further, back then I'd come to San Francisco. We applied to YC. We didn't know whether we should raise funds, not raise funds. We thought, everybody raises funds. You have to raise funds. Otherwise, how will you do ads to get customers and all of that? So we figured it out one step at a time. But the one noteworthy thing throughout that was we always made revenue every month and kept making little more revenue every single month, which is how it became a real business, come 2012.
So how did you make this revenue every month? I mean, you had an idea, you are iterative in a mode, which is iterative. You had one customer in Bangalore who sort of pointed you towards, hey, will you make something? So were you going to companies at this point first to make money, or were you going to the candidates? How did the model work?
Only to companies. This was only a software used by and paid for by the recruiting team, the HR team, the hiring manager, because that's what the product ended up focusing on. And to answer your question, even in the early stage of the product, like when there was 3, 4, 5, 6 months of development done, we had 7 online customers paying every month and 4 offline customers in India. Many of the 7 online customers had come from Google Apps Marketplace and Chrome Web Store. So we put the product up online anyway, even though we kept working on the product. And that's what told us that, there's something here. By the way, we didn't even have anything like Stripe hooked up back then. We didn't even have a US entity. So we used to send a PayPal link every month by email that please pay your invoice, please pay your invoice. And they were still paying. There was no automatic recurring billing. So that is a lot of validation. And that's what gave us wind in our sails to continue. So even before we came here or did anything, there were 7 online paying customers, what we call online acquired, and 4 offline customers in India.
And how much were they paying on an average?
$100 a month each.
Okay. That's still $1,000.
Yeah,
which is not something to scoff at. Yeah. So why did you decide to put it in the Google? I mean, it's a SaaS. How do you put it in the Google Apps store? I don't hear many people exploring that option.
No, they have changed that. Changed that. Now it's not what we look at Google Suites and Google Apps now, which are Google's own app. Google had a thing called Google Apps Marketplace. Funnily, I don't even know if it's there anymore, but I know it's not in its current form. And this is not a Google synced API app or anything. It was literally a directory where we could put our listing and it linked out to our site, recruiterbox.com.
Got it.
And there was no Chrome plugins back then. So again, this is 2011, 2012.
Right.
So it's easy to, it's hard to remember now.
Yeah.
But we put it there, and many people have asked me that question, that what Google App Marketplace you're talking about, and now I realize that now we don't use that anymore, and there's no discovery there.
Right. So what happened next? So how did you decide, because North America was your focus, you decided to relocate to San Francisco?
That was a little later. So first what we did is, to be honest, we did a lot of online marketing, SEO work, content blog. Early in the life cycle, for a year or so, there was no paid ads. I think for a year. Then a year later, we actually started. We put a little bit of a push on paid ads. But most of what we did in 2 years, from mid 2011 to mid 2013, was a lot of SEO content work. And to be honest, end of 2012, early 13, the SEO paid off in a big way. So, we basically, if you typed in back then recruiting software, recruitment software, applicant tracking system, we were the second or third organic result, and there were 700 competitors.
Wow.
So by the way, we didn't even know, because we were building the product thinking, we are replacing email and Excel. A lot of small companies are using that email address that send me your resume at careers@thisthing.com or jobs at thisthing.com. That was the problem we were solving. And then we realized that, there is a whole category here. There are enterprise players like Talio. So funnily, our ignorance worked in our favor, because even the product we made was not like a copy of anything. We were like, what makes most sense for a small company not to learn a software and any manager to be able to push feedback into the system? So what we realized is that those other softwares were built for process, whereas we were built for productivity. That actually let's make a good hiring decision.
Right.
It's a different thing that later I think you heard in that session. We learned as we went, and we realized that we are not playing in as big of a market that we thought we were. And we back then we were not scoffing at the $100 per month. By the way, we were elated. We thought it was like amazing that people are paying this money to us online completely without talking to us. But yes, so to answer your question, SEO came in a big way and it helped us to triple revenue. Like 2012, I remember we did 100K. 2013 we did 300K, so we doubled annual. 2014 we did 1 million, so we again tripled. So 100K, 300K, million, we tripled. 2014 is when I came to the US, early to mid 2014, and this is when we were like, hey, what do we have this little business, but what do we do to kind of go slightly mid market? And that's when that whole exercise started.
So how big was your team by this time?
Yeah, so we were, because 2/3 of the founding team were also engineers. So we were a very product engineering heavy company. And that's what we believed in, that, hey, we got to build all these features. We were getting all this feedback from the funnel. So we were exactly, I'll tell you, 13 people in 2014. We were about 13 to 16 people at $1 million in revenue.
Wow.
Mostly in Bangalore.
And 2/3 of these were in the product side, in the building side.
Yeah, more than 2/3. And 2/3 were, and I think 3-4 people were customer support.
Okay.
SDR sales. But because our funnel was so inbound, it was mostly engineers.
Okay. So at this point, how much were they paying annually? Obviously, it's not $1,200 anymore, or was it?
It still was. We tried our best to push that up. The bread and butter, even at $1 million mix, the bread and butter was the $100 business. Like we tried this, that I can tell you, but the bulk of it was $100 per month business.
Okay, so you had 1,000 customers by this time, which means to make that math, right? Yeah. And they were all. So let's go back to this SEO bit that you did, which obviously was your initial engine, which drove your inbound. So who was producing this content? How much were you producing? Where all were you publishing this? What were you doing actually?
We were producing it. So I'll tell you, and we went through some cycles of this over 3 years. So we did a lot of it in-house. We also had a content agency. So first we started with doing in-house. We had a content agency for a whole year and a half. 2 years, I want to say. We had a SEO and content agency in the US, right? And then we had in-house content writers throughout the remainder of the company, by the way. So and then we also, I kind of did a lot of guest posts. I also used to do like a fair bit of writing, but we did a lot of guest posts to get links from other sites coming to Recuiterbox.
Backlinks.
And our own content team used to do then a lot of the posts on the Recuiterbox blog, right? Which sort of then continued for the remainder. In fact, we had, when we sold in end of 2017, we had we had 3 people, 2 to 3 people on just doing marketing content. Okay.
And were these all sort of like text based, or did you start doing some videos and stuff like that?
Mostly text.
Okay.
We didn't do that much video back then. We didn't do that much video back then.
So if you compare your current business, do you think that that kind of an approach will work still? Because obviously there's a lot more content out there today. Ranking is not that easy anymore. So 2011, 12, when you are starting, getting to the second listing on organically is a big deal. I mean, whether we recognize that or not. But today it's not so simple, right?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Because I'll tell you why I'm saying that. I'll give you a real example. I think it actually depends on the search volume. So now my problem is, if you look at Recuiterbox and the applicant track is a recruiting software, and even if you look at a fresh desk, these are categories with a few thousand monthly searches. Okay. And I think one can participate there. So I'll quickly give a SEO story here, which even now that I've done it a second time, I understand that it wasn't an accident. I'll be very honest with you. I was always a little confused about actually kaise hua. Because anybody that I'll tell you how SEO works is lying, because nobody knows. Even people at Google may not know. Only 5 people there may know. But the point is, right now, I do know, because if you type in and anybody can do this in your audience also, if you type in MySQL to Redshift or Postgre to Redshift, I just put out blogs now, 2 months ago in 2021 for Flydata, and they are at the top. Okay. So why I'm saying yes and no is, there are still ways of getting things to rank on top. It's actually gotten super sophisticated. I actually use this editor that tells me if what I have written is deep enough to get A+++ score. And I think in 2 to 3 months that post will rank. But the real question is, if you ask me, Achha, you ranked for MySQL to Redshift, or what do you really get out of that? Like, what's your conversion? What's the traffic like? It's a very high intent, but it's a low traffic situation. So you're right that if you are in a high traffic competitive situation, it may not be that great. But I feel there are always long tail opportunities with SEO. Like, if it's okay if high intent matters more, even if it's low volume, it's okay if you have to do 200 high intent things.
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, I was doing a series on B2B sales conversion problem for another show that I do. And essentially, it's boiling down to, are you getting hundreds of thousands of people inside your funnel on the top who actually are not your buyers? I mean, you're just spending a hell of a lot of time with people who had no intention of buying. They're just there. They're just spectators, they just got into the funnel somehow. You push them into the funnel somehow. And it totally makes sense. It's time for a short break. I was trying to sum up the SEO strategy Raj was talking about and summarized if going after a low volume, high intent prospect base is the key. Raj has a counterintuitive point to that thought. Stay with us.
You are listening to a Business Podcast Network original. Podcasting is the fastest growing content marketing opportunity which is untapped. We can help you craft your audio strategy and help leverage the wide reach and easy streaming capability that the smartphone penetration provides. It is easy, it is powerful and personal. Talk to us to find out how podcasting can help you build your brand and reach out to your targets like never before. Write to us at bpn@bizcast.in. That is bpn@bizcast.in. Business Podcast Network. Podcasts end to end.
Welcome back. I'm Shubhanjan Sarkar, your host for SAAStories and founder of PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. Right before the break, I asked Raj if targeting low-volume, high-intent prospects are enough to move the needle. Raj doesn't think so. Listen in. The way to rank is to go into the long tail and get those 20, 30, 40, 50 or 100 people who are looking at your domain but with higher intent, right?
Correct. In the same breath, I will also say that may not move the dial. Again, this is on a case-by-case basis, depends on what people are solving for, what those 20, 30, 40 things are. Is it $100,000 product? Is it a $5,000 product? Right?
Yeah.
Because I've also learned one other thing I would add, which I didn't know in Recuiterbox, that many things are a search and discovery product, whereas some things are a trust and referral kind of a buy. It doesn't matter how much it gets discovered, right? So I feel Recuiterbox at $100 a month was a search and discovery kind of product, and obviously you put in all sorts of validations and reviews and certifications and partnerships, and now you have G2 rankings. You need that, absolutely. You need that at both ends. But then sometimes things are trust and referral kind of products. And there I think you want your content ranking, not your key that I make this software and my homepage should rank. No, like a lot of tutorials about how somebody thinks about the entire problem, that should rank, because then your thought leadership is sort of out there, and then you can run retargeting on those blogs, right? So in fact, it's better that somebody is finding value in your blog. I always say your content should also be a product. And that's why there's so much shitty content out there. Like we all literally need to think like a media company. Even though what we make is software, you literally need to think like a media company, and even go beyond, because then you need to also add value. So you are a media and an ed tech company if you're doing like a blog, and then you can run a whole bunch of retargeting on that.
Right. So go back to that $1 million. We are now in 2014. You have done a $1 million. You have gone to San Francisco to understand how to expand the market and so on and so forth. Although you had a great track record up to this point, you are triple, right? So now. So what happened next? You are in San Francisco. What were you trying to do? You mentioned YC in between. When was this?
No, that was 2011. We briefly came here for YC, and we didn't get in. Honest, so we were shortlisted for the interview. That's why we were there. We didn't get in. So we kind of went back. We looked at a few different things. But now to answer your question, basically what happened is we tried doing outbound sales, and in that first year, we mucked it all up. Actually, that's the truth. And 2015, we doubled to 2 million. Now, funnily, if you think about it, we went from 300K to a million. So we added 700K new, and then million to 2 million. So we still grew a little faster off that larger base. We went to 2 million. However, again, we did a lot of forking of the funnel during that time till the end of 2015, to be honest. So we were like, where should we take these $100 customers? Where should we take these $500 customers? Now only let's get on a call with people doing $500 or like $6,000 a year. And we got some of those customers, and their composition increased a little bit. But honestly, that $100 business was because it was coming in, it was happening to us. Then there was also churn. So off that larger base, there was churn happening on that $100 business, right? And then we made a few mistakes. We couldn't figure out how to do sales, etc. We made a few mistakes till the end of 2015, and then we sort of figured out how to hire a good SDR remote team here in the US. So I had 7 people in the US. None of them were in San Francisco. They were in Denver, Boston, all these other places. And we actually got a little better at that, but not enough, because on the other side, what was happening is we realized that there is this thing called positioning. And we were positioned as your easy tool, your first recruiting software, hire with your hiring manager, etc., etc. And there we were seeing companies like Greenhouse or Lever. I don't know if you heard of them, but Greenhouse suddenly took a lot of business from JobWhite. Like they were like bigger, because Greenhouse started saying data-driven recruiting. Means the same product. And probably they were developing functionality faster, but the marketing spin on it was data-driven recruiting. So they went in through all the VCs and captured that mind share. So if you actually, people were paying them like 10 to 50K per year, because that, so then we realized that, man, marketing and positioning is everything. Like you can take the same thing and you can sell it for, 10 times more. And we were also not doing employee-based pricing, because we are like, this is not payroll software. Like or this is not a team communication channel. So if out of 50 people, 5 people are logging in, how do I charge you for 50 people? But see, this was all lessons, because Greenhouse was still doing it. They were not doing it per user, but they're like, for 1,000-person company, the price is, $50,000, $60,000, etc. So, very honestly, we didn't know how to do all this. So yeah, sorry, go on.
No problem. So this, you really didn't have any cost of acquisition because people were coming purely because they knew and through the content and whatever ranking that you were doing, right?
Yeah. Now what happened is we were able to then get to some cost of acquisition when we started spending on ads. Because as you can imagine, once we were making even 1 million, once we hit 1 million, we were always spending on ads, to be honest, right? And when we were making 2 million, we were spending 30K on ads, because out of 160K, that was like 20% of marketing budget we were spending on ads and, ancillary things around there. So yes, we did have a cost of acquisition, but, funnily, we see it's great to not have a CAC, but if you are then going to raise funds, it's almost better to have a CAC and show the equation, because people are always scared of something they can't compute or calculate. So all this were lessons later. But if you are running a common sense business that let's not spend $10 to make $5, then it was amazing. Yes. Right.
So now you're at 2 million. And you are still having the maximum number, which are still paying you like $1,000 a year. What moved the needle to 4? What happened next?
So 2016 we went to 3 million. See the other, and I'll what moved the needle I'll tell you, but you can pretty much guess that the same growth rate was happening, but the composition was changing. But the bigger point there was that. See, what we realized end of 15 also was that my co-founder Girish always had this vision that, applicant tracking software was not it. That was not the $1 billion company. Like there was a bigger problem to be had in recruiting. Okay. And to be honest, since we were not such a funnel-led, no board meeting, no VCs, etc., we had the luxury of basically doing experiments and doing R&D, right? So while Raghu and I ran Recuiterbox, Girish peeled off to try this other thing which we thought was going to be the future, correct? And we were all pretty excited about it, and we knew it was a long shot, but we were okay giving it a shot because we were like, it's okay, now we'll figure out how to get this to 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 million. But this other thing is what is the future of the company, right? And we were willing to roll the dice on that pivot. And when mid 17, we decided that we didn't know where that was going after a good 18 months, a good 18 to 21, 4 months on that pivot. That's when I think again, I'm sure all three of us will have a slightly different version of this story, but I think we all emotionally checked out, or at least, we emotionally checked out. So when this private equity offer was there, we were like, we'll take our chips off the table and do this whole thing right based on $1 trillion of lessons that we have now amassed.
Right. So the question is, how much did you sell the company for at that point?
So our growth rate was slowing, our churn was high, so our sale price was less than 10.
Okay.
But there was no earnout. There was no earnout or anything. It was all cash upfront, and all three of us walked in a week. So you worked as multimillionaires, which is good, which is excellent. Yeah, I mean. I mean, it's essentially the amazing part is I think it's anything's. If you look at the Boolean between you getting a cash exit and it going to zero, it becomes super hard to do one more. And that's the big takeaway for me. Whereas whatever that exit was allowed us to basically do one more and continue the crazy adventures.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that makes it so much more bearable, right? I mean, you don't want to go through the grind once more with complete lack of understanding where this is going to head. By the way, what was that pivot you were working on?
Yeah. So remember, in somewhere in the early part of the story, I mentioned that when we are looking at jobs, we are only looking at titles like product manager, account executive, sales, but we don't know how it is like to work at this company. So what if you could get an internal picture of the culture of this company and what it was like to work at this company, right? So what Girish was experimenting with is, can we get companies to sort of write about their work, write about their wins, and put out their work samples out there, like maybe in a team form factor, etc. And it was super interesting. It was super fluid. What we learned is it was also a big behavior change for people, right? Like, and what we've realized is ride on something which is an existing behavior of people. Here it was, people had to go and actually write something, like even if you make it easy for them in Slack or wherever else, and then we would accumulate it somewhere. So the end result of this is that you as a candidate could come to this page where you're seeing things from inside the company turned around and exposed to the outside world, basically.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, it is the flip of the Glassdoor, actually, if you think about it, right?
Absolutely, exactly.
Which is interesting. Sure. Great. So tell us about Flydata. I mean, you made a change in your journey, saying, okay, I will go and acquire something which is, so I'll not do that iterative business. At least in the initial iterative business, and I'll go and acquire something which is $1 million of revenue and has a product market fit. So I skip those 4 or 5 tedious years and then try to grow it to a 10, 20 million business. How did you find these guys? How did you embark on this path?
Yeah, you pretty much gave my answer accurately right now. But product market fit is a lot of fun, can be a lot of fun, but sometimes it just takes the life out of you. And maybe I'm making this decision based on the experience that I just passed through, and I'm like, hey, let's see if we can build a larger company, right, than Recuiterbox. Yeah. But coming back to, I think the process was a lot more fun and interesting. So what I did is, before, right around the time COVID was kicking off, I was like, a lot of people might, I don't know, are dependent to keep raising money to do what they're doing. And if they have raised a Series A, raise a Series B, etc. Yeah. So I was actually very curious. I did a crunch-based search on every company in San Francisco that had raised 6 million or more 4 years ago or earlier, and had never raised a round after that, and had team size of 20 or less.
Right.
This was my equation.
Nice.
And so I sent out a campaign. I do kind of a lot of cold stuff effectively. I also have like a Upekha class. I can share it if your audience wants to. I show all my cold emails and what I do in the story and psychology of it or whatever. But anyway, I wrote to 119 founders, and I had a 50% reply rate from that, and I had 22 calls scheduled in the first 2 days. One of them was Flydata, and it raised $9 million, was less than $1 million in revenue. And by the way, all these stories were amazing. In a lot of cases, I realized I would not be able to do anything. Like literally, there was like even though my filter was SaaS, there was like a drone software for agriculture and this and that. I was like, not a good fit. I won't be able to add much value there. But when we saw Flydata, it's not like I knew much about infrastructure software either. But what I loved about this business is it had super low churn. And see, again, I guess we're all a sum of our life experiences. I was coming off of 7 years of being so burnt by churn and churn was like, stinging every day, that I was so enamored by such a low churn business. I was like, this is like an electricity connection business. You cut out all the other expenses in your house. The last thing to turn off is electricity. Correct. And not just that, if you use the AC more, the bill is higher.
Yeah.
So that Flydata is that kind of business.
Right. So
So I made him, and so he had raised a lot of money. They had tried 2-3 products. The money had come and gone. The team had come and gone. The products had come and gone. This was one product with a loyal customer base, and it was just him, the founder, and 2 support engineers, remote, 2 support people. And so I kind of it was perfect because he wanted to leave and join a Series A startup as VP of engineering and CTO here in San Francisco, and he was like, I just need to resolve this. And so it was a complete win-win, and it was low enough of a risk for me, to be honest. It was small enough of a business that we could learn on as our first acquisition.
So did you sort of do a cash acquisition, or you did a cash and stock kind of thing? What did you do?
We did a 3-part acquisition. We did cash, which was less than 1x of annual revenue. And then we were giving him some 10% of revenue for the first 2 years, so 1 year's over. And he also had about 5% of our new company, basically. We bought 95% from him. So he gets. So it was a combination of all 3 for him to also feel comfortable.
Sure. And what about? I'm curious. See, he had raised $9 million. There were VCs. How did you manage? They had written it off.
They had written it off. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're really talking about small numbers. Like this is, it's like, I don't know, like when you are at, 700K in revenue, and it's a 500K, let's say, purchase price, return on cash invested, and what are the VCs then care about? They put 9 million.
Yeah.
So like their lawyers probably cost them more. So
right.
Even this was all new to me, by the way. Right. I didn't know why they would, but apparently like he would either shut it down or give them this something, etc. I guess.
Right.
It was right.
Fair enough. So where do you go from here? Where is your focus now? What are you doing with Flydata? And what is the path, say, the next 12 to 24 months?
So I'll actually I'll share some mistakes here also, instead of making it sound like a hunky-dory story. The good news is, we went into this with our eyes open, because the deal was so low for us that we were prepared that we would also have to write it off. Okay, point one. So we went into it with eyes open. But 12 months later, my lessons are that if you are acquiring something, then either product or growth has to already be figured out. You shouldn't go in and figure out both.
Correct.
If you have to figure out both product and growth, then you are as good as not having product market fit.
True.
So this is lesson number 1. Because we had no engineering continuity. There was nobody to continue. So he gave us some. So our team, bless their soul, phenomenal Eng team, we rewrote the whole product. We also rewrote the product because we realized that infra is kind of old for all the connectors we want to add. So not to go too technical, but we have a data pipeline product for Amazon, Redshift. But now we also want to have a Snowflake as a destination, as a data warehouse. So we decided we'll have to rewrite it. So it took us a large part of the 1 year to rewrite it.
Okay.
Good news is we kept adding more customers. It is a miracle that without anybody knowing how to change the old code base, the whole customer base is happy and the thing is running. Okay. So to answer your question, where do you go from here is we are now feeling pretty good about Flydata growth in the next 1 year. Like we've added about 20% revenue growth in the last 1 year. We did have some churn because people were moving to Snowflake from Redshift. So that's product related churn we want to solve. And now we're trying to go deeper because this is a very this ecosystem is connected to a lot of other products in the data stack. So while this is not a great channel for most SaaS products, for us, partnerships might be good. So we're trying to partner with Snowflake right now.
Okay. And what is your customer acquisition process now? Is it through content, or is it through advertising? Is it through referral? Where is it today?
We have exactly 3 channels. We are doing SEO, content SEO, 2 sides of the same coin. We have paid ads. Google AdWords is working predictably for us, and our customer acquisition cost is $1,500 per paying customer, but our average customer pays us about, let's say, $750 a month. So it's a 2-month payback. So not too worried about that, but also these have a ceiling. And my third one is outbound sales. So I have 4 SDRs in Bangalore that are going outbound after like specific segments. So all 3 of them are plugging along, and then sure, we have referral, but these are the 3 that we usually keep, objectives and OKRs on.
Okay. And this SDR team is working, it's like an outsourced team, or is it your own team?
No, own team.
Okay. And that's working out fine.
Yep. It's so the reason I won't be able to evaluate it completely is, so it's working out fine because they're adding people into the funnel. But we need some product work to get the conversion to where it needs to be. So we are purposely not being able to target certain people, and hopefully in a quarter or 2 we solve that.
Interesting. Okay, great. Are you planning to raise any money?
No, only to buy more companies and buy more revenue, not raise money for Flydata.
Okay. So it will be the Decalab structure.
Exactly. Okay. Because how will we buy? The other lesson is it's much easier to buy bigger companies than smaller companies, by the way. That's what I'm realizing. But I'm sure every private equity person over there is going, that's obvious. But like I'm speaking experientially now as an operator. So
Right.
SAAStories is brought to you by PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. PitchLink enables high-quality interactions between buyers and sellers through presentation and discussion modules. Sellers create personalized sales presentations and reach out to prospects through a non-intrusive, buyer-qualified engagement. PitchLink requires no installation or download and holds the entire repository of sales collaterals and buyer-seller conversation. Talk to us to know more about how you can engage with customers without intrusion. Call us on 990-216-3132. That is 990-216-3132.
Well, Raj, this has been great, and I wish you all the best, and I hope we'll keep talking, because the interesting part of this is not to do siloed discussions, but have a continuity in the discussion, right? So I'm also trying to figure out how can we do it in a podcast? How can we see that we repeat the story and actually catch up, on a timeline basis, how the things are progressing, right?
I'm happy to share. I'm happy to share even, at my own expense. Sometimes it'll be embarrassing, like things won't work out, but that's fine. I'm happy to share anyway. So like we just set this one up, ping me anytime and we'll just get on a call.
Great. So thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Likewise.
We have a fantastic lineup over the next couple of episodes with great conversations, including Rajiv Rajnesh and Nathan, founder of Startup Hypeman, Lazar Rozilan, co-founder and CEO of Spoke, and many more. Subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you do not miss a single episode. Thanks for listening. Thank you for being with us today and listening to this episode of SAAStories. This is where I speak with the dreamers and visionaries who dared to think ahead and build world-class SaaS products. We hope this conversation helped you with the insights that you can go and apply right now to your own SaaS journey. We hope to have you here with us again in the next episode of SAAStories. SAAStories is brought to you by PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform, and is a BizCast original production.